A bit more history, the early teaching years and adapting to a new lifestyle. My first teaching position, I arrived in Houston in August of 1988, started teaching shortly thereafter. I had seventh graders. Seventh graders are actually a little bit crazy. I loved it, but I had to learn a lot about adolescence and hormones and keeping kids' attention. And it was trial by fire since I had not taught, or student taught even, in many, many years since 1981. I was at Ali Middle School, which was a predominantly African American school. I had to learn a lot culturally too, how to deal with kids who often had, most of our kids were single parent homes, and many did not know their fathers and definitely did not have a father figure. So in many cases, I became that father figure, separating yourself, the teacher, from the father figure that the kids wanted you to be was difficult, and you had to draw the line, obviously, and let them know that, hey, I am your teacher, I am your friend, but I'm not your parent. I will do the best I can in teaching you values, right and wrong, etc., and teaching you a little English along the way. And that was pretty much my trial by fire that first year at Ali Middle School. It's funny because I looked about 12 years old, and I was 30 years old when I started teaching. I wore a shirt and tie virtually every day so the staff could tell me from the students. One of my dear friends, Helen Brooks, who has since passed away, would stop me in the hallway probably the first 3 or 4 weeks of school and ask me for a hall pass. I had to remind her that actually I was one of her colleagues. I taught English as she did. She was in the sixth grade hallway, so didn't see me as often as maybe some of her other buddies. She finally realized that I was in fact a teacher, not a student, so she stopped asking me for my hall pass. Now, in addition to my teaching, and I love teaching English, guys, I'm passionate about English, and I tried to make the kids passionate about English as well, even though many of them had reading levels that were 2 or 3 years behind their current seventh grade level. I broke it down for them. I pushed them. I challenged them every day. I didn't dummy down the lesson just because they couldn't read as well. I helped them learn to read and helped them learn to appreciate not only reading but becoming better writers as well. We wrote constantly in my classroom, journals, essays. Writing was the key and the basis of our English class, our seventh grade English class. Discipline was not really an issue because we had a strong administrative staff, so just the deterrent of having to visit Mr. Dombrowski was enough to keep most of the kids in line. Ray Whitley. Ray Whitley was an African American assistant principal, and I remember I did my best never to write referrals and send kids to the office, but a couple of times it was just unavoidable. I had some incorrigible kids, and I remember apologizing to Ray when I sent one particularly difficult student to his office, and he said, "Kim, you can't teach with a fool in the classroom." And I never forgot that phrase. My first year of teaching, you can't teach with a fool in the classroom. So you tried to keep the foolishness down to a bare minimum. And I was not one of those teachers that sat at a desk. I moved around constantly. So at the end of the school day, I was exhausted. I would always do my morning run early, 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m. to get my 10 miles or more in, because I knew that after school and after coaching football all evening, I would not have the energy to go out and put in a quality workout. So typically it was one run a day, anywhere from 7 to 11, 12 miles before school, teaching school all day, and then coaching football for 2 to 3 hours every afternoon. Yes, I coach football. In Texas, you coach football if you want to coach anything else. Track was my passion, of course, and I was the head track coach, but track wasn't going to happen until the late winter, early spring. So in the interim, I coached football. In the following years, I also coached basketball, but that particular first year, I coached football and track. So my typical day started at 4 a.m., ended at 9 p.m., often with Kim falling asleep in his plate of food on his lap, watching a tiny 10-inch screen television and just trying to unwind after a long, long day. Numerous times I woke up in my little lounge chair and would put the plate of food away, the unfinished plate of food, and go to my bedroom and actually sleep for a few hours, then get up and start the whole routine again. My little football team was quite good. I coached the 7th grade B team, which is basically the kids who weren't good enough for the A team. We were tiny. Most of the kids, even the linemen, were smaller than I was, and so we had to practice a lot of the passing offense and high octane, high speed offense. We threw the ball a lot, much to the dismay of my high school athletic director, because the high school teams didn't throw nearly as often as my kids did, but we had to throw. We didn't have the power in the backfield or the power on the line to run a lot, so we were a passing offense. And we actually did the shotgun. Anything that the high school did, we could do. I just did it a lot more often than they did. So we ended up, since we had mostly the kids who were really good in academics and maybe not so talented athletically, once the grades came out about midway through the football season, we went from 0 wins and 3 losses to I think we won 4 wins and 1 loss to finish our season at 4-4, 500 my first year as a coach, and so that was kind of cool. On the running end, I had to learn very quickly that my races were going to be a little difficult at first because I wasn't used to being on my feet all day. My job at Runner's World was typically telemarketing and then visiting events and working at expos, and that wasn't the same as being on your feet 8 hours a day. 10 hours a day with the football practice, and then trying to have a quality workout, whether it was that evening or the next morning, as it was in my case. And so races were a struggle for a while. I was frustrated that my times weren't quite as good. I was running 108 to 110 for 20K, whereas typically I was running 104 to 106 for 20K. I'm sorry, for 20K. So that was frustrating, getting used to the slower times. I ran the Houston Marathon in January of 1989, ran 2 hours, 31 minutes, was very frustrated because my previous marathon was a 2:28, and then before that a 2:27, Boston and Houston respectively. I thought I was kind of washed up. I pretty much decided that I was going to stop competing and just run every day. So after my first year of teaching, I basically became a runner, a fitness runner, keeping my streak alive, and didn't worry about the competition. I really shouldn't have been so frustrated with the 2:31, but we get a little bit arrogant and bold in our younger years. And looking back on those days, I could have kept running and probably would have done quite well in the following 5 or 6 years, but I decided that I would focus on the teaching. I started playing a lot of pickup basketball. I had some incredible kids, incredibly talented basketball players in the 7th and 8th grade ranks at Ollie Middle School. So I played a lot of pickup basketball with them and ran every morning, but it was typically 4 to 5 miles and no competition, just focusing on teaching and coaching and getting into a new routine. More on the teaching years and coming back to competitive running in the next episode.